It's gone.
How many years? 17. Congratulations.
We're good.
We're good.
Is it going?
Was I supposed to hand these back out? I got a whole
8
stack.
papers.
Do you have extras?
Yeah.
Oh, there's supposed to be more? No?
Yeah, but I
Oh,
didn't know.
I didn't know there was 2 stacks. I thought we had the only stack. Anybody else want one?
I don't have one. It went back here.
Okay. All right. I can't.
So, thank you all for coming. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mark Terry. I'm Jennifer's husband. So I wanted to begin with, last week, just around or 2 weeks ago now, it's about the same time that Jim died, the humorist P.J. O'Rourke also died.
Yes, yeah.
And I do remember seeing P.J. O'Rourke's book on Jim's bookshelf. I don't think they probably agreed a lot, sort of politically and all that, but one of the things that Jennifer has mentioned more than once was that there was an allowance for the kids. They could say certain things as long as they were funny. They could get away with it, and that's probably how P.J. O'Rourke got away with things in Jim's mind. So there were 2 quotes that I found from P.J. O'Rourke that I wanted to share. The first is, I lost my place with it. Where was it? Sorry. It's not in the order that I was going to do it earlier. Oh, here it is. If there are 3 words that need to be used more in American journalism, commentary, politics, personal life, it's the magic words, "I don't know." That's from P.J. O'Rourke. And this other one was, even very young children need to be informed about dying. Explain the concept of death very carefully to your child. This will make threatening him with it much more effective.
I like that one.
So I don't know, was that a quote maybe your dad took to heart when you were children?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think that quite
I
fits,
don't really remember
fit his
threatening to
style.
kill us either, but I do know that I was afraid he was going to kill me. I don't ever remember him threatening. It's the best kind.
The Lord heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Great is our Lord, abundant in power, whose understanding is beyond measure. Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and I am life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, yet shall they live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore. And I hold the keys of hell and death. Because I live, you shall live also. Blessed be the God who consoles us in all our affliction, so that we may be able to console those who are in any affliction, with the consolation with which we ourselves are consoled by God." So, although he once remarked to his daughters that Anonymous is part of the name, it was not much of a secret that Alcoholics Anonymous was a big component of Jim's life. And I thought it would be appropriate if we begin by praying together the full version of the Serenity Prayer, which is on the handout. So if you join me in this. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking as he did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen. A reading from Ecclesiastes. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What gain have the workers from their toil? I have seen the business that God has given everyone to be busy with. He has made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, he has put a sense of past and future into their minds, yet they cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I know that there is nothing better for them than to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live. Moreover, it's God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasures in all their toil. I know that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has done this, so that all should stand in awe before him. That which is has already been, that which is to be already is, and God seeks out what has gone by. So I saw that there is nothing better than that all should enjoy their work, for that is their lot. Who can bring them to see what will be after them? And the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And this last reading is from near the end of it's past the Beatitudes, but it's part of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And I picked this in part because, as I'm sure just about everyone knows, Kurt Vonnegut was one of Jim's favorite authors. And the Beatitudes, Kurt Vonnegut was an atheist, but the Beatitudes was one of Kurt Vonnegut's favorite pieces of writing. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Now, speaking of Kurt Vonnegut, I'm going to share a reading from Kurt Vonnegut's Cat's Cradle. And this is, for those of you who are not familiar with the book, this is from the, you're an Amazing Grace in the background there.
Jennifer's laughing.
That was
She's making
cue,
me
right?
laugh.
Just got really loud all of a sudden.
So, for those of you who are not familiar with Kurt Vonnegut, he was an atheist, but he spent a lot of time imagining what heaven might be like, and he spent a lot of time figuring out what would be a better religion than Christianity. And in Cat's Cradle, there is a character named Bokanon who has created a new religion, and it's outlawed in the country where the main character is. But the leader of that country is dying, and he wants the last rites of this religion that he has actually outlawed. And so this is the last rite rituals of this religion. It's the two men, the one leading the man who's dying in the ritual. God got lonesome. God got lonesome. So God said to some of the mud, sit up. See all I've made, said God, the hills, the sea, the sky, the stars. And I was some of the mud that got to sit up and look around. Lucky me, lucky mud. I, mud, sat up and saw what a nice job God had done. Nice going, God. Nobody but you could have done it, God. I certainly couldn't have. I feel very unimportant compared to you. The only way I can feel the least bit important is to think of all the mud that didn't even get to sit up and look around. I got so much, and most mud got so little. Thank you for the honor. Now the mud lies down again and goes to sleep. What memories for mud to have. What interesting other kinds of sitting up mud I met. I loved everything I saw. Good night. I will go to heaven now. I can hardly wait to find out what's for certain what my Wampeter was and who was in my Charis, and all the good things our Charis did for you. Amen. Now, the Wampeter, I'll explain those two terms to you. It's got me thinking about some other stuff. Wampeter, a Charis are the people in whom your life is entangled with, and a Wampeter is a central element that a Charis forms around. And so, anyways, I was thinking about those entanglements. So, yeah, I am a pastor. That's why I got roped into doing this today. And, one of my, I don't really have a lot of pet peeves as a pastor, but one thing that always makes me a little nervous is when someone from the family says they're going to speak at the funeral and they stand up and say, I don't have anything prepared. I'm just gonna wing it.
2 hours later.
Yeah. Well, I don't have anything prepared. But in thinking about things, I came to the realization that I knew Jim well, but not as well as I could have known him. But by then it was too late. Plus, I didn't want to miss out on the spread. So. But one thing that I often talk to families about in the light of a death is I talk about gravity. And I mean, we all know how gravity works. It's two bodies pull on each other. And the thing is, they pull on each other. No matter how big or small, they both pull on each other. And in doing so, they have an impact on each other. The Earth keeps the moon where it is around us and in relation to the sun, and the moon affects the tides here. And in any two physical bodies, as they get close together, there's gravity. As we stand close together, we are actually pulling on each other, even though we can't really feel it. And so when we lose somebody, we lose that pull on our lives, and then we also have that. It's sort of multiplied because we were also pulling on them. And so in that letting go, our orbits all change a little bit. And it changed in significant ways, whether Jim was somebody who was still in your orbit a lot, or whether he orbits more in the distance. They change, and in this moment, we all have kind of choices to make, what to do with that extra energy. In the ways that Jim's orbit shaped you and kept you on a certain line, and in the way the energy you gave him went in that direction, now you have the opportunity to do something different with that. And I was thinking about that, in part thinking about, again, Kurt Vonnegut, who in this passage was talking about how, in life, his observation in life is that, we kind of get caught up in orbits with people, sometimes expected and sometimes unexpected. And for Kurt Vonnegut, that was in some ways, the most valuable relationships. I don't know if that says something about his own family relationships, that he felt other relationships were better, but that's kind of the reality. And in fact, in one of his other books, Jailbird, one of the great accomplishments that the president feels he had made as president was that he assigned everybody a random middle name. And you were instantly in a family with everyone who had that same middle name. And the thing is that that's a Kurt Vonnegut idea, but it's also a biblical idea. If you look through the stories of the Bible, Old Testament and New, you find a lot of times people coming together and forming these circles, these gravity circles, where they're not related, they're not family. And in fact, usually the families in the Bible, I think of all the families in Genesis, are the most dysfunctional groups of anything. And it's true. I mean, and you don't have to look to the Bible. You just look to life. You look to, whether it's whether it's your workplace, whether it's the people on the TV show The Office, whether it's the people on Friends. There's this TV show called Friends. Emma, have you heard of it? It's a little before your time. I don't know if you like it or not.
It used to be on everything.
Yeah. We form these circles. And one of the things that I'm struck by in Jim's life, and my observation of it, is that in his life, he moved from one circle to another. Kind of looking back at his life, in my view, he had kind of like 4 parts to his life. He had the growing up family and that circle, and then he came to America, and everything changes, right? He comes here, his one sister's already getting married, he's in high school, and very quickly he moves into another circle where he jumps from being the son in the family to being a husband and father. And it really kind of blows my mind to think that he was younger than we were when we were married, and younger than we were when he had kids.
He was younger than our kids.
Yeah, right. Right. It's like looking at our sons and picturing them as being married and having children already. And one thing when you become a parent, you do become aware of how your parents were really winging it in a lot of ways. Like, you just assume when you're a kid your parents had some sort of parent manual, and then you become a parent, you realize there was no parent manual, and then you look back and think of Jim and Janice, being like 20 years old and no manual, and forming this new circle. Now he's in this circle where he's husband and father, and that circle is life for a while. Right? And then that marriage ends, and then he's in another role in his life where he's single father, and his role changes with his girls, and his life changes in other ways as well. And he has to find other planets to rotate around, other people to bounce off of. And then, after going through that, when he comes to a place where he realizes one of the things that's part of his circle and part of his energy, is this unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and he goes into recovery. He's obliged to do it again, to form new circles, and do that. And in so doing that, his life changes again. And every one of those things, it moves some people closer and some people farther away. And that's the reality of life. But one thing when I look back is I think there are all these times where he always had the choice to just not bounce off of anybody anymore, right? To walk away from anything, to not put in the work to build a new relationship, to not put in the work to try to extend old relationships in new configurations. But he put in the work as best he could. And I think that is part of the legacy that we can carry forward. One of the things that atheist Kurt Vonnegut and the Christian religion have in common is that they all both look at the world and see us really as being kind of foolish, and seeing that most of what we do is foolishness. The difference is that there, Kurt Vonnegut, we are called at least to try to love one another. And that's not just feeling love, but that's connecting with one another. That is where meaning is in life. It's not in great accomplishments, because anybody can accomplish great things if they put their mind to it. Anyone could be this or that. But the difficult thing is relating to people in a real way. And I see that Jim strived to do that with a lot of people in a lot of different circumstances. And even as his life changed in some significant ways, he continued to work to make connections as best he could. And I hope that that's part of the legacy that we can carry forward. I forgot to say before I started talking that when I was done talking, we were going to invite anybody, if anyone had a particular story or something. I know you've all been sharing throughout the afternoon, but I don't know if there was any particular memories or anything that someone wanted to share when they have the opportunity to share it with the whole group, if they'd like to share it this time.
Matthew has a couple of things that people sent us to be read.
And why don't we start with that, Matthew?
Can you come over? We're
yeah.
taping it.
This is from Bob.
Bob Peters was, he was on, my dad was a radio DJ back in the, well, when I was born, and like through like 1971, 72-ish, and Bob Peters, and he got into all kinds of trouble. Yeah, did you not? Yeah, they reconnected.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so
he made me call him.
yeah, so they had lost touch for many years, and then they found each other again, and so that's who Matthew's reading from.
I can't say it was a surprise, but I was sad, of course, to hear Jim passed away. Thank you for taking.
You can do it.
Let me try. Sorry. Okay.
That's why we picked
Thank
you
you for
to do
taking
this
the time to
together.
let me know. Jim and I spoke a couple of weeks ago, and he said he was getting off the chemo and starting hospice care. Neither of us said it out loud, but I think we both knew what that meant. He's at peace now and finally pain-free. Don't tell anyone, we can't have this getting out, but I tear up when I think how thankful I am that we were able to reestablish our friendship after all those years. We just lost contact for a decade or so. He moved a couple of times and I moved a couple of times. It took a lot of detective work, but it was worth every minute of effort. Thanks to Allison for putting the final piece in the puzzle. She was easier to track down than Jim, and I didn't even know her last name. Jim and I met over 50 years ago. Good grief, 50 years. I just don't have any other friendships of that duration. We worked at a podunk little radio station in Geneva, New York, where we were both getting started in the broadcasting industry. We just clicked. He was the morning disc jockey with a Scottish accent, Scotty G. James, and I was the morning news guy with no accent, the man from nowhere. We were both off work by noon each day, which gave us plenty of time to goof off. What times we had, many of which involved vast quantities of beer, while listening to 1960s rock music at ear-bleeding volume. I blame Jim for my tinnitus today. He came to Idaho for a visit years ago. I played in a fast-pitch softball league at the time, and it turns out we were short a player, so Jim filled in. Now, fast-pitch softball was something that had, to that point, escaped Jim's many and varied interests. I told him to start swinging on every pitch, then try to stop if the pitch wasn't to his liking. In his first at-bat, he barely made contact, but the ball blooped over the first baseman's head for a hit. Second at-bat, same thing. When he came up for the third time, the other team was yelling, "Hey, let's remember this guy." It seems Jim had developed a reputation. Darned if he didn't hit another dying quail barely out of the infield. We were laughing so hard it hurt. He got more hits in the first game he ever played than I did all season. You might say he caught on quick. I can't say I respect too many people, that's just me. I'm just a cynical, grumpy old man. But I always respected Jim. I always considered him a kind of Renaissance man. He was knowledgeable and conversant in so many areas, from baseball to English literature and beyond. I appreciate the fact he never made me feel stupid. Oh, I get Scottish accent. Stupid. It's been said there's no such thing as a coincidence. Maybe so, but Jim and I later discovered we shared a couple eerie incidents during our hiatus. Among them was the cancer thing, but then we each done found us a good woman, but just as importantly, we found Jesus at about the same time. I think we can all take heart in the fact that that's working in his favor right now.
Very nice.
And then this next one is from Michael Dolce Mascolo.
Dulce Mascola. He was a teacher at the junior high, and I guess they did theater together.
The theater masks, which represent comedy and tragedy, are an apropos image for Jim. He could offer serious insight, then switch instantly to zany laughter, a delightful fluid flow of energy. He was such a steadfast supporter of the journalism students at the high school and junior high in Cicero, North Syracuse. In those pre-digital cut-and-paste days, Jim patiently responded to students' questions, as well as those from their advisor, me. Jim's competitiveness exploded on the racquetball court as 4 fully grown men compressed themselves into a tiny room to swing fiberglass rackets like so many Neanderthal clubs. Jim's racket missed the ball and struck my face, cracking open my lip and successfully resulted in a bloody mess. Thoughtful, creative, witty, add those descriptors to the many you'll hear when reminiscing about Jim Arnold, a character in all the best connotations of the word. Thanks for the chance to share best to Jennifer, Allison, and all the family. Michael. Wilson's quote.
Good job.
Good job.
Thank you, Matthew. So, did anyone have anything they? Yeah, if you can, make your way over so we can get you on tape.
Okay.
Unless you're in the witness protection program.
No, it's just that Clumsy is my middle name. So all those who have the middle name of Clumsy, let's form a family.
Form your own wampus.
So, I guess, as Pastor Terry said, we all have orbits that overlap and come together and fall apart and go apart. I knew Jim in many capacities as the years went by, but I met him when I was a young mother and he was a newspaper editor at the Brown newspapers. And at that time, I was taking care of foster children. My husband and I just love children, and so we thought as long as we had a few of our own, we ought to just, fill the house. So one of them had Down syndrome, and we were in a program that was new and vital, and the people who ran it wanted to get the word out to other people. So to make it short, Jim agreed that he would do a story on little Jenny and the procedures that we were trying to do to help her develop. So I was prepared for a journalist to come to my home. I was not prepared for this this big guy who got right down on the floor with Jenny and worked right along with me in helping her learn how to use manipulatives and do all the things that were so important to her development. And to see him tear up and cry because he was so overcome with emotion at this small child working so hard to do the things that we were trying to teach her. And I fell in love with him that day, and it has lasted all these years. He's just been a marvelous influence on so many people, and I just appreciated his friendship, his mentorship when I too went to work at Brown newspapers eventually. Oh, that's a story. That's a story.
Check with Allison.
Do I have time for a story?
Yes, please. Yes. This is what this is for.
So here I am, this mom with, at the time probably 6 or 7 kids around, and the phone rings and, Jim's voice on the other end, he says, "I don't have anyone to cover the village board tonight. Would you do it?" And I said, "Jim, it's nice you asked, and we met that one time on the living room carpet, but I'm not a journalist." He said, "Nothing to it." He said, "You've been doing the PR for your PTA. You spell things right. You're on." He said, "Please help me out tonight." So I said, "What should I do?" Jim gave me, I think, 3 rules. Write everything down. So I said, and the second rule was spell everybody's name right. And the third one was, when you get back to your typewriter, kids, typewriter? Yeah. Just put it all together. So that was my initial journalism training right there. It might help to know that I went on to direct the journalism program at SUNY Oswego.
There you go.
But I got my first indication from Jim. Weeks went by and he had me cover a school board meeting one night, and I forgot rule number 2 because Flo Newhouse spoke, and when I published it in the paper, it was FLONEWHOUSE. But her name was NEUHAUSE. And that's when I learned something Jim hadn't told me, and that was use the phone book. Phone books were big books.
Big.
Jim loved poetry, and if it's all right, I would love to read a poem that kind of fits our occasion.
Perfect.
Okay. This is by Jane Kenyon. Let evening come. Let the light of late afternoon shine through chinks in the barn, moving up the bales as the sun moves down. Let the cricket take up chafing as a woman takes up her needles and her yarn. Let evening come. Let dew collect on the hoe abandoned in the long grass. Let the stars appear and the moon disclose her silver horn. Let the fox go back to its sandy den. Let the wind die down. Let the shed go black inside. Let evening come. To the bottle in the ditch, to the scoop in the oats, to the air in the lung, let evening come. Let it come as it will, and do not be afraid. God does not leave us comfortless, so let evening come. Thank you.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything they wanted to
I will.
do?
It's hard to follow those great stories. You can do it.
I don't really have stories so much as thoughts that I just wanted to share, primarily because I loved your dad so much. Oh, wow. I didn't see this coming. When I thought back to when I was younger and I had so many wonderful friends, you know, my friends all had parents who I adored. I knew them all, and they were parents. They were my friends' parents. But it was different with your dad because he would make me laugh, and he would give me advice, and he'd listen when I had to talk about something, and so I just want to share a couple of things that always stand out. You know how when you're older, there's just times in your life you'll be going about your day and you'll just have a memory that'll pop into your head. And so many times memories pop into my head of your dad, so I just wanted to share them with you, and I kind of did in my post to you, but I just want to share it again. One was the fact that he took us to see Anything Goes, which he was starring, which I thought was amazing. Okay, I knew the person up on stage singing amazing. I thought it was the coolest thing in the entire world back then. But what it did is it instilled in me an absolute love and passion for musicals, for any type of musicals. And you know, fast forward 5 years later, and Michelle and I are jetting off to Toronto to see different shows in Toronto, and now here we are with my son, and he's been to New York City several times to see different Broadway shows, and I owe that all to your dad, because I feel like he totally introduced me to that world, and I loved it, and I wanted you to know that stays with me today. When I take Eddie to a show, I'm always thinking of your dad. Always, he's always in the back of my head. And of course, when I said we're always laughing, I can. You know, being able to spend the night at your house and do sleepovers and play charades and all the crazy games. I know people who know me today will say, Julie plays charades, because I'm that person who goes to like baby showers. I don't want to play the games. I don't want to be in that. I'm not about the games. But I love those games, and I still, you know, I try to get my son to do stuff like this once in a while, and he doesn't want any part of it. But I try really hard. So instead, since my son doesn't want a part of it, I bring it to my team at work, and they just love it. You know, we are always playing games, and I'm trying to make up games, different games, and a lot of them came from when we were at your house. Like, I think of that game that we played. Where you had to sing lyrics of a song. I think it was called Song Lyric was the name of the game, maybe. But
was something like that, yeah.
Something like that. I did it as a team building exercise at work, and a lot of those games came from just hanging out at your house and playing with your parents and your dad.
That is true, because I was telling Rick earlier that your dad always like entertained us and played games with us, and my parents were like, "Hi."
Yeah, and that's what I mean. You know, I knew your parents. I knew your parents. I knew all my friends' parents, but your dad was more like a friend, like extended friend. You know what I mean? I can't explain it. But one of my favorite memories is that we used to go visit him at his apartment in North Syracuse, and I loved going there. And it wasn't because there was a stripper who lived upstairs. Had nothing to do with them. That male stripper upstairs named Scott. I had nothing to do with him. But I used to love to come and hang out with him, and we used to have so much fun with him. And one night he made us dinner, and it was, you know, I was younger, so, you know, now that I have my husband who cooks these great, wonderful gourmet meals, it's a little bit different. But back then he brought out the tortilla chips, smothered them in nacho cheese and hamburger. It was the best meal I ever had. I thought it was so amazing. And I went home and told my mom and my stepdad, I have to make this meal that Jen's father made for us. And so she's like, all right, well, you can cook. This is great. And so this is the meal I made. I remember my stepdad just being like, this is dinner? This is not dinner. This is supposed to be a snack. What is this? But that was, you know, and to this day I think of that. You know, whenever I eat nachos, I'm thinking of your dad. So, I mean, your dad is in my mind a lot. And even during the years where we weren't connected as much as we were, because it was before social media and after school, your dad was always popping up in my mind. And I just want you to know how much of an impact he made on my life. And I loved him so much. And I'm so glad I could be here to tell you that. So.
Thank you so much.
Was Julie the one that when the neighbor left, your dad went over with the napkin?
No, that was me. He had a dish towel and he wiped the drool off my face as I was closing the door behind the stripper leaving the apartment.
And that, you know, that nacho meal, it's funny because the summer after we graduated from college, I ended up staying at the house because I was going to Ohio State in the fall and I had a fellowship, so I kind of really didn't need to work that summer and nothing was coming together in Connecticut, so I spent the summer sleeping on the couch. And Jim wasn't working that summer either. He was kind of out on short-term disability, I think, or something. So Jennifer would get up every day and go clean rooms at the Red Carpet Inn, and her dad and I would hang around the house. And now I think about it, like, here I am, his daughter's fiance, playing football on the street with the 12-year-old kids who live like, I don't know how he didn't somehow get that engagement broken off. By the end of the summer, I don't know, he could see the long picture, I guess, in that. But did anyone else have? Oh, well, anyways, the nacho meal, that was the one thing he still cooked. The one dinner that he made was the nachos.
I just want to say, you know, he dropped me off at the Red Carpet Inn, and I graduated college with a 3.97, and I was like, he's dropped me off one morning, and he just shook his head, and he's like, 0.03. Thanks, Dad.
So did anyone else have anything they wanted to share with the whole group? If not, obviously, you know, we hope you've been sharing those stories and we'll continue.
Can I say, we don't have many, but we have some handouts in the hallway here, and my email address, my sister's email address, and my stepmother's email address are all on there. So if you think of something and you want to share it, we just ask, you know, go ahead and share it with all of us. We'll all appreciate it. We'd have to share it with each other anyway. So, but there's a couple stories in there too. So if you want to take one of those on the way out. Oh no.
Oh, look. You can do it.
You can do it.
Jim was my mother's brother. And when my mother was dying, her sister didn't show up, and she lived, you know, a couple hours away. And my mother was in the hospital for a long time. Jim came from Maine and sat in Glens Falls Hospital with us for like 10 days. And something, he stayed at my house, and we
you got to know each other much better. And he got in my car to drive to the hospital one day, and, you know, I still listen to 70s rock, and he says, do you know anything out of this? You're still listening to this? I'm like, yeah, this is you should talk, and, you know, you should talk. And we, after we would go to the hospital, we'd go out and get some dinner or something, and on September 11th, we went to visit her, and she had been like in a coma for a bit, and we went to get dinner, and I was like, let's just go back, because, do you feel like going back? It was early, and he said yes, and so we went back, and we went back, and so all of a sudden my mother started talking to somebody. She was in a coma, but I'm looking at Jim going, she's talking to somebody, and he's like, yeah, she's talking to somebody. And I was like, you know, she's going to do, September 11th was her wedding anniversary, and September 12th is mine. And so things were getting worse, and I said to Jim, I said, you know, her last to me is going to be, she's going to die on my wedding anniversary, you know. So I went to the bathroom. I'm in there like 2 seconds, and he's knocking on the door for me. He goes, you should come out. I said, I'm going to the bathroom. I'll be right out. I don't know, I'll be right out, okay? So when I got out, something was happening. We could tell, and we just both were over there sitting with her, and she just died, like right at that moment. And for some reason, we went back there. We weren't going to go. We were going to go back to my house and go back in the morning. So we were fortunate enough to be there at that minute, and I think Jim and my mother were close. They also have another sister, Betty, which nobody's close to. And she's alive. She's the only one still living. So a lot of our family history is gone with it. But there's a lot of kids here that, you know, are not Arnold by name, but they're Arnolds, and they're good people. So that's comforting that all these kids are still around to share that, you know.
They're all right.
Yeah, well, yeah, sometimes, right? Sometimes we'll take it. So that's what kind of person, you know, you had. So it was just odd, you know, that he just out of the blue drove down. He drove down twice. He drove down when she was first in, then he drove down the second time. And it's a 10-hour drive. It wasn't like it wasn't like you were driving to Syracuse. It was a ride, and so I was thankful that he was there for that, because, you know, those two are close. They both went through the alcoholism problem, and they had many things. They both didn't like Nana. They were the closest of the two. So that was something to share, you know, with them. So that's it.
Excellent. Anyone else? And I also want to encourage you, if you share more stories among yourselves, make sure you also share several plates of food, right?
Yes.
It's not even cold enough to put it in the garage to keep it cold.
Right.
So we all know Jim is a lover of writing and everything, and poetry. So I thought we would sing "Auld Lang Syne," written by Scotland's poet Robert Burns. And you know, if we do a great job, Jim will be proud of us. If we do a terrible job, Jim will be laughing at us. So, anyways, there's only 3 of the 5 verses, and I did put it more in English than Scottish for us. All right. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and old lang syne? For old lang syne, my Joe, for old lang syne, we'll take a cup of We too have run about the slopes and picked the daisies fine, but we wandered many a weary foot in old lang syne. For old lang syne, my Joe, for old lang syne, we'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. And there's a hand, my trusty friend, and give us a hand of thine, and we'll take a right goodwill draft for old lang syne, for old lang syne, my Joe, for old lang syne, we'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. I'd like to close with a couple of prayers. Jesus, our friend, you wept at the grave of Lazarus. You know all our sorrows. Behold our tears and bind up the wounds of our hearts. Through the mystery of pain, bring us into closer communion with you and with one another. Raise us from death into life, and grant in your mercy that with Jim, who has passed within the veil, we may come to live with you and with all whom we have loved in our Father's home. God of us all, your love never ends. When all else fails, you still are God. We pray to you for one another in our need, and for all anywhere who mourn with us this day. To those who doubt, give light. To those who are weak, strength. To all who have sinned, mercy. To all who sorrow, your peace. Keep true in us the love with which we hold one another. In all our ways we trust you. Ever-living God, in Christ's resurrection you turned the disciples' despair into triumph, their sorrow into joy. Give us faith to believe that every good that seems to be overcome by evil, and every love that seems to be buried in death, shall rise again to life eternal. O God, all that you have given us is yours. As first you gave Jim to us, now we give Jim back to you. Receive Jim into the arms of your mercy. Raise Jim up with all your people. Receive us also and raise us into a new life. Help us so to love and serve you in this world that we may enter into your joy in the world to come. God of love, we thank you for all with which you have blessed us even to this day, for the gift of joy in days of health and strength, and for the gift of your abiding presence and promise in days of pain and grief. We praise you for home and friends, and for our baptism and place in your church with all who have faithfully lived and died. Above all else, we thank you for Jesus, who knew our griefs, who died our death, and rose for our sake, and who lives and prays for us. Even as we mourn, we give you the glory for giving us Jim, for giving us your Son, and giving us the promise of eternal life. Amen. Amen. And then to close with this poem that you also have a copy of, just for your own keepsake. An honest man here lies at rest, as ere God with his image blessed. The friend of man, the friend of truth, the friend of age and guide of youth. Few hearts like his, with virtue warmed, few heads with knowledge so informed. If there's another world, he lives in bliss. If there is none, he made the best of this. Thank you, everyone, for joining the family today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.